Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's your boy. I'm back, man. Took a slight hiatus. It is November 10th, 2022. I am Music Monk ATL. This is my brother Rashid Muhammad.
What's up?
And we are beer in a conversation. Clearly, Laris is not here today, but
comprehensive barbershop talk.
Hold on. Say that one more time for me.
Said the world's #1 show for comprehensive barbershop talk.
The world's #1 show. Hey man, I appreciate everyone. I know Laris, our host. We always appreciate these opportunities to host. He is out there following and fulfilling his purpose out there in the political world. So salute to my brother. It's a lot going on. The last couple of weeks have been very, very, very heavy for everyone. Everyone has an opinion about whether or not it's Ye, Kyrie, the election. I think specifically I wanted to talk a little bit about the loss of Takeoff. I'm going to get to that, but I haven't seen my brother Rashid in a minute. It's good to see you, brother. What's going on? What's new in your life? What you got for us?
Not a lot, man. Just trying to stay healthy, trying to stay sane, which are increasingly more difficult for me. But I like to think I'm on the right side of it. How about yourself?
Grateful, man. Attitude of gratitude, man. I always express that. I feel like I have a very sickening way of showing my gratitude to people. I feel like you can never say thank you enough. So whenever I'm in people's presence, I appreciate everyone. And definitely good to see you, man. Like I said, when I pulled up, I said, okay, we're gonna have us a show tonight. So briefly, thoughts on the election.
I don't know. I mean, I guess the thing is that the Republicans and Democrats both make a sport out of learning the wrong lesson from elections. And I don't see anything necessarily changing here. I think as far as the state of Georgia is concerned, I think the Democrats' eyes got bigger than their stomachs after 2020. And I guess after 2018, too, they just felt that because Stacey Abrams was so close to Brian Kemp, that meant that things were changing. And then with Warnock and Ossoff winning, they, seemed to, I believe that even more. My theory has always been that Georgia is still a fundamentally red state. It is just not a very Trump-friendly state. I think that Kemp very much was dealing with kind of the stain of Trump, though from his perspective in 2018, it probably wasn't a stain. But I think that's why things were close between he and Stacey Abrams that first time. I think that's the same answer for Warnock and for Ossoff. But this election go round, I think it's very clear. I mean, Kemp slaughtered Abrams.
Yeah, that was an ass whooping.
Yeah,
it was very thorough.
The first time was by about 55,000 votes. This one, last time I looked, it was like 300,000.
Yeah, I mean, this was an 8-point. This was an 8-point margin.
It was a laugher. And I mean, Raffensperger basically cruised against Bee Nguyen, and and again,
I saw that coming.
I didn't really understand the Bee Nguyen thing because I feel like the General Assembly is better with her being in it than not in it, which is where we are now because she ran for Secretary of State. The person who ran it, I think Syra something or rather, who took her place, I think it's just a lesser. I'm not really Sarah Draper. This is not really to talk down on her, but just to say that I just think B is an extraordinary person, and I think that not having her in Georgia politics is probably not a good thing. And I never thought that she would beat Raffensperger because it just wasn't clear to me that Raffensperger was going to lose a primary. That was the only way that she would win if she lost a primary.
I didn't see it either, but I did like she appeared on, what was that, Capital Gang one morning, and I wasn't familiar with her, and I was actually listening to her, and I was just like, it might be refreshing to get, since there seems to be like a shift in a change in the guard, or they want it to be one. I was like, okay, well let's kind of see how this works. And then when I really, really started paying attention, I was just like, there wasn't really a real discernible reason for him to lose. And I think that's kind of what you got to look at when you look in a position like Secretary of State. He was, there was not very much. There was no controversy around that office. Everybody was really looking at this gubernatorial race and these senator races, So I probably would have saved my money if I was her.
Yeah, I would have saved it if, I would have just stayed in the same. I mean, they could have run somebody else. I mean, because had Raffensperger gotten primary, they could have put Bernie, as in Weekend at Bernie's, up there and probably would have won against whoever was there, because that would have just shown that.
Where's the Bill list? Shouts out to the 80s babies who grew up watching all of the Weekend at Bernie's on HBO on a Friday night.
Yes, I think, the only Democrat left standing statewide is Warnock. And Warnock has gotten lucky because he's just drawn two really terrible opponents. He drew Loeffler the first time. She was horrible.
Yeah.
Walker's horrible. And, he barely got more votes than Walker. And I think that the Walker thing has less to do with him as a candidate. I think we all recognize he's a subpar candidate. But I think that it just has to do with, divided government. It has to do with just kind of being fed up with the Democrats. Georgia seems fed up with Democrats.
Yeah, I think it was probably triggered in a lot of ways by how Keisha Lance Bottoms handled a lot of the uprisings and things that was going on, the protests and things. I think that was probably a clear indication that you probably want to just abandon ship now. You know what I mean? I mean seriously, because it was literally an embarrassment. Especially when you had to come back and drop the charges against the cops, the cops that were involved in the shooting with Rayshard Brooks. You had to reinstate the officers who were accused of assaulting the college students during the riots. There was a lot of fear mongering and propaganda around that whole social climate at the time, that she readily jumped in. And I think a lot of people, once the dust settled, I think they realized, they said, as we take a step back and we're looking at the people who are actually complaining, there are some things that we can surmise about these people. And it doesn't really seem that accountability and actually appreciating diversity of thought is one of them. Did you just win an auction on eBay? Where's my bell at?
That's
but I digress. But like I said, I think that was one of the first chess pieces that fell so it fell abruptly. Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. So just looking at how everyone just started falling off. Like literally all of the people who were just politically. Now I am glad that brother what's his name, the mayor Dickens, right?
Andrew Dickens, yeah.
Dickens. I like him. There's actually another councilman that I met that I like. What's that? TG4. Todd Gray. I like Todd Gray. There are some people out there that I like what they're doing, but when it came to the Democratic push, it just really felt like it was about to get really nasty, and any sort of facts that you had to maybe debate about why certain things shouldn't be going on, or why we maybe as a demographic are voting a different way, there was no real discernible or applicable response that made sense. Just like we were speaking earlier, I'm still waiting to hear about what we were misinformed about in this previous election, when there are approximately 11 million people in the state of Georgia. Approximately about 3.5 million people roughly voted, give or take, right? Plus or minus. Then that leaves...
Yeah, I think it's on the plus side of that, but yeah.
Yeah, so between 3.5 and 4, between 3.5 and maybe 3.7, 3.8 million people voted. So not 4, but my point is that the other 7 million people that decided not to vote for you, that were eligible, not all 7 million of them were, but there was a large enough people to where it's not just about the people who, like me and you and our brother Laris and all of our other educated brothers out there, not to dismiss the sisters, but specifically we were targeted because there was a notion that we were ignorant to what our actual conditions are. Like, oh no, you don't know what your reality is.
Yeah, well, that's a typical progressive liberal thing where they tell you that you're voting against your own interests as if they know your interests better than you know your interests. And I think that, I don't think Abrams ran a particularly good campaign. I think that she, even though, the question of abortion and where that played in the election, I think it played differently in different places. I don't think clearly it was not a difference maker in Georgia. And she just would not let go of it. And instead of pivoting to the economy, she decided to like tie abortion to the economy.
So it's crazy because so I was talking to Laris the other night, and we followed up with the conversation the following morning after I slept on some things, and I said, what I noticed the most, right? I noticed, number one, the obvious accusation of us being misinformed with no real indication of what we're being misinformed about. Number two, which I thought was a nuance that is overlooked, is the fact that a lot of brothers in the South, the ones that typically are overlooked, actually have been voting for a very, very long time. Typically have been voting. If you grew up in a southern household, the importance of voting is almost like you're going to graduate high school, you're going to vote, and you're going to go to college. And even if you didn't go to college, there was definitely emphasis on voting, right? I've been voting since I was 18. And I know that my vote matters because I get selected for jury duty like clockwork because I am voting in my local elections. And my point in saying this is that I think it was very egregious for our sisters to get up there collectively on the national stage and say that we're misinformed,
put us on blast,
put us on blast like that, not understanding that it was black women in our communities and raised us and reared us that made sure that we were going to go out and vote. My mom made sure I came back from campus. Even when there was no absentee ballot when I was in undergrad. There was bring your ass home and vote. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you got to do. You're going to bring your ass home and vote. So we may not have always understood the details and the political paradigms that we were engaging in, but we were active. So to come back, 20 years later and specifically target our age demographic, particularly because it's us, I just felt completely insulted. And then for you to have your concession speech, and I'm going to make this point, and then I'm going to send it off to you. When Brian Kemp did his speech, and I just want everybody to pay attention to this. This has nothing to do. As a matter of fact, I want to take gender out of it. You have candidate A and you have candidate B. Candidate A has a family behind them, wife and or husband, and multiple kids. Candidate B has mostly, like all women, no men, with a mixture of heterosexual and LGBTQIA. I think I got it right.
They're two
plus. Right, I got it right. Damn, I got it right.
There's asexual and there's allies.
And there's allies. Okay.
Which basically is everybody.
So you have person A and you have person B. And what is overlooked is that black men traditionally are conservative. We do want families, but we want wives. And there's nothing wrong. And I'm not saying that there aren't Pookies and Ray Rays, but we know that there's a facilitation aspect that goes along with that, right? But we want strong communities. We know we all got a pop. We all got a unk. We all got these old school black male pillars in our communities who gave us the game and held it down. And we're kind of following in those footsteps. But to not have a man present at all, and you're wondering where the disconnect is, I need everyone to pay attention. You cannot ask for something and you are blatantly ignoring and disrespecting that of whom you're asking. I don't understand it. Like, I feel like I'm gonna ring my own bell on that one. It might be a weak bell, but we just need to get the bell going. I'll be honest about it. But seriously though, like, I was very, very astonished at the fact that there were no men on stage when Stacey Abrams gave her concession speech.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I didn't see any of the concession speeches or anything like that. But I remember when I was on the show, and I think Laris even made a clip of it when I said that Stacey Abrams was a Marxist, and she might be, but like, I don't like to say stuff like that without real support. And I went back and I kind of looked at her positions, and I don't really think that adequately explains her positions. And I remember going through this whole thing where I was like, why did I think that? And the reason was because everybody that I knew that was really pushing her, that was like connected to her campaign or really advocating, they were all women, they were all Marxist, and they were all radical-ish like feminists. And I don't necessarily have a problem with any of that stuff, but like there was just a clear pattern. I mean, that was just it. Like nobody else, no other type of person was advocating for Stacey Abrams.
My brother, you couldn't even hear. You could hear men like in the background crowd, but it was like them niggas was like in the back. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like you could hear like you could hear some bass in the crowd of Sopranos. You know what I'm saying? Like you could hear it, but it's just but no visual representation. Getting out here, I didn't even really see her campaign with Warnock necessarily. Too heavily.
I think Warnock realized that she was toxic, and I mean by that I just mean that like
that's some real that's some real shit though,
Warnock
man.
Knew that race was cool. So it's funny. I was listening to some AJC commentary on the election, and they were talking about Kemp and Walker.
Okay,
and they were talking about how Kemp said that he would campaign with Walker, but Walker didn't say the same thing. And I think it's clear the reason there is because Walker's Trump's guy. Trump hates Kemp. And so by Walker, saying he would campaign with Kemp, that would like undercut his campaign. And so they were talking about how like had Walker, campaigned with Kemp, since Kemp won by so much, Kemp could have dragged Walker across that line.
Really, for real.
But I think it might be more the opposite, which is that like had Walker like jumped on with Kemp wouldn't have won by as much